Right, so Raspberry's barking in the background. There are reports coming in that community leaders and regular people in the community in Iran are being taken to undisclosed locations. God knows what's happening to them. We don't know because the Iranian regime, they do things in secret, and the families have been also been taken into custody, right? And they let the women go, but they detain the men. And so now it seems like they're going after the Jewish community, the Iranian regime, because, Jews are collaborating with the Israelis, they're spies, right? Even though the Jewish community firmly stands with the regime because they have to. They're hostages of the Iranian regime because they don't want anything bad to happen to them and their families, right? And so it's very scary. And but that's what usually happens, right? Because everybody says, Zionism is not Judaism. But so why are you going after the Jewish community? Why are you going to Jewish neighborhoods? Why are you attacking Jewish people? Why are you attacking Jewish children if what's happening in Gaza has nothing to do with the Jewish community? Obviously, there's some sort of connection there, even if you won't admit it, right? And just because you say that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, your words are different than your actions, right? Actions actually speak louder than words. So let's go and see what it says here, right? One second. Iranian security, one second. I'm trying to get this OBS to work. Iranian security detains Jews over suspected collaboration with Israel. Activists say Iranians living abroad sound the alarm, saying among those taken by security forces to an undisclosed location are rabbis and community leaders. Iranian Jewish community members were arrested on suspicion of cooperation with Israel, according to activists around the world. Those rounded up by Iran's security forces were rabbis and community leaders in Tehran and Shiraz. Members of one family had their phones and computers confiscated. The women were released by the men, but their men remained in custody. Iranian media posted photos of a Jewish community gathering in support of Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, and the military. So here is a Jewish community gathering in support of the Iranian regime, right? And they have to support the government because, number one, if we're in a foreign country, we're supposed to pray for the strength of the government, because if a government is not strong and there's no law and order, then everybody kills everybody. So that's number one, we're commanded to do. And number two is that we're supposed to be loyal to the governments in which we live, right? And that's why a lot of the time you'll see Jewish people who are in Ukraine, for instance, they're fighting in the Ukrainian army against the Russians, right? And the same in Russia, right? So you can have Jews in every country fighting the wars of the countries which they live in because they're loyal to they're usually loyal to the state, right, in which they live. Because at the end of the day, the state in which we live is not really, it's not our country, right? It's not our country. We are not, we're guests there, and we have to double down and show our loyalty, because otherwise we will get accused of being traitors and espionage and spies and God knows what else, right? And then it's really bad news for the community. So, after all, we do come from Israel, and that's something that, without recognizing our being indigenous to Israel, without fully recognizing that we are indigenous to Israel, they behave in behaviors which actually prove my point that Jewish people are not, we're just guests in other countries. Our real country is Israel, and the non-Jews in those countries recognize that, and that's why they treat us so badly, because they understand that fact that we are indigenous to the country of Israel. And so Naz, an Iranian activist living in the United States, raised alarm in a post on Instagram saying she was told by a friend in Iran that security forces were entering the homes of Jews and taking them away to unknown locations. So here's all the Jewish community sitting. They're gathering in support of the Iranian regime, right? They have to make a show. They have to show solidarity. They have to say, we're with you, because if they don't, then they'll get accused of being traitors and espionage and spies and doing all different kinds of bad things, right? And so, just like Tucker Carlson likes to accuse Jews of, like Ben Shapiro, of dual loyalty, right? So, the Jews need help. When the regime is under threat, it takes it out on the minorities, she said, and asked to spread the word that the Jews in Iran need help. Dr. Tamar Elam Gindin, an Iran expert at Haifa University, said that although the Iranian regime has tried to appear as providing full freedom to the Jewish community, the reality is more complex. Jews in Iran are sort of hostages held for propaganda purposes. The alleged fair treatment of Jews, the fact that they are represented by a lawmaker in parliament and are free to work in any profession, is so that the Iranians can claim that they are not anti-Semitic or only anti-Zionist. But as you can see, it's just a facade, right? It's a facade. And it's just like what, Stalin did to the Jews, the same way he used them for propaganda purposes, and in the end he sent them to the Gulag, right? It's the same thing here. And it's very scary, because in the Stalin regime, it seems like Stalin really went after people who are involved in politics, who are known figures, people who are in the arts, right? And anybody who was even connected with any sort of, there's a lot of people, right? So anyone who's connected with any sort of like editorials, if your name was on any paper that you might have written a comment there in the newspaper, you were a fair target to Stalin, right? But here it seems like the entire Jewish community is under threat, right? They can all be killed, right? It's not just even though, Stalin at the end of his life, it was a little bit more complicated than just, he's just going after the artists and the intellectuals and the Jewish newspaper and trying to crush the Jewish culture, right? He went after the Jewish community and the Jewish culture, right? And the Jewish people, they had to put their head down, and they were discriminated against, even though they weren't completely obliterated and annihilated by Stalin, right? So, but here, like, I'm not sure if we can even make this comparison, but the Jewish community, the entire Jewish community, even though, some Jewish people in the Stalin era survived, right, like my grandparents, but it seems here that it's a different case entirely, but it's similar circumstances, right? So let's just leave it there, because if we're going to go into the complexity, it's going to be more complicated, right? So last week, during the Israeli bombing campaign in Iran, he urged Jews to avoid any form of celebration, even in private homes or preschools, despite the fact that recent Israeli airstrikes have targeted only military and nuclear sites. Right, so I strongly advise you to take this final warning very seriously. He specifically prohibited bar mitzvahs, weddings, and family gatherings and festival events, whether at home or in educational institutions, while the IDF attacks were continuing. Right, so Dr. Hamayon Sameh, so he's part of the Iranian the Iranian regime. He has, like, in the government, a seat there, right? So I think we skipped this part. Dr. Hamoun Sameh, the Jewish member of Iran's legislature, called on Iran to respond to the Zionist aggression in a statement put out jointly with the community leader. He said that Jews are always grateful for the regime, right? So he has to say that, because if he doesn't, then the regime will kill them, defenseless Jews, right? Last week, during the Israeli bombing campaign in Iran, he urged Jews to avoid any form of celebration, even in private homes or preschools, despite the fact that recent Israeli airstrikes have targeted only military and nuclear sites. Because it doesn't matter, even if you're celebrating something like a bar mitzvah for your child, you will be accused of celebrating the strikes that Israel is striking in Iran, right? So it's a complicated situation. You're dealing with tyrants and monsters, right? And that's that. So whether at home, don't celebrate, or in educational institutes while the IDF attacks were continuing, there are an estimated 9,000 Jews living in Iran, the largest Jewish community in the Middle East, right? So outside of Israel, of course, but in all other Muslim countries, you have like one Jew left in Yemen. There's no Jews left in the Middle East, because they ethnically cleansed the Jews out of there. So the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside of Israel is in Iran, 9,000 Jews. Most are centered in Tehran, and smaller communities are found in Shiraz, Isfahan, and Kermanshah. Wow. So that's really scary, and I really hope that I really hope that somehow the Jewish community can get rescued from, like, Israel did like Operation Solomon, right? So I wonder if something similar can be done for the Jewish community in Iran, right? When the Jewish community in Ethiopia were under threat, the IDF, the State of Israel, they went out of their way to the Mossad to rescue the Ethiopian Jews. But I don't know if we can do that here. Maybe they're planning something. I don't know, right? So let's hope that we can bring them all home to Israel and save their lives from monsters. Or let's just hope that the Iranian regime falls and it's replaced by democracy, and the Jewish community can stay there, right, and be safe, because it'll be freedom, right? Anyway, have a great day. Feel free to subscribe, feel free to like, feel free to comment, and have a great day. Raspberry wants to play. I have to go play with Raspberry. Okay.